Welcome back, amigos and amigas and league fans alike, for game number 2 between Immortals Academy and Resolve. I'm Ravishing Ravishing yet again by Dean, Rebel Fox, Merrick, Dean. We got replays on deck to look back at the game 1, which I find was just definitely two sides of the coin, but the coin at the end of the day ended up on Immortals.
Really did. It started off looking good from Resolve, a couple of different circumstances. Being able to set up some of their team fight. We got a glimpse of IMT's dominance in terms of team fighting very quickly in the game, with some of the AoE that comes out from What Is Everybody, and the chase down from Pre ended up getting into a situation. But again, the composition drafted from the likes of Resolve was sufficient to team fight, right? It wasn't a bad team fighting composition. And so you could see strike backs in some of the mid game where Resolve is making some of these counter punches and going back and forth, which led us to believe, okay, this is going to be a close game. And a couple of situations from that point where we're just kills back and forth. So what we expected was a late game 5-on-5 where we were just whoever ends up with a better team fight, whoever ends up scaling or connecting with their ultimates better wins.
And consider where we're looking right now, right? It's with Resolve, it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of adapt to going into this game number 2. Because considering, I find they had a solid game plan, but when it came down to just small moments on the side of Immortals Academy, right? They continue on with their team fight and just catching the right person. Actually, you know what? Realistically, if you just gets down to vision, I think Resolve are actually perfectly fine. They can do the exact same thing before, but just get more wards down. Nobody has to get caught out, and everybody lives.
Yeah, being able to first off understand when an engagement from Immortals is going to come in is going to be huge. The other thing is if they have another champion in the back pocket of PCL that could buy better space to start with. I'm not saying Volibear's a bad champion. It did well and it did good into set, right?
Yes,
but
it did.
If you have something that can buy space, probably the best example is GP. If you got barrels and they start running at you, you pop down more barrels, you plop down cannon barrage. All of a sudden, it's harder to make that engage or force that engage to work no matter what, off the back of just the fact that now they have to run through damage, they have to run through slow, things like that. That is something to consider, but I agree with you wholly that RSV, the way that they tried to play out this game, the team fighting that they had set up was sufficient to take this game against the likes of IMT. IMT just were able to force their authority much better than what RSV was able to do, especially when it came to some of the team fighting tools. APA and Fnatic, they had a couple of really good ultimate combinations, but when the fight got really fast and things started to break apart very quickly, when your lines started to break, all of a sudden those ultimates didn't have the same kind of impact.
And impact is what we're looking for, right? It's what more can now Resolve do going into this game number 2? They're fighting for this proving ground lives. The first team to beat an Academy team, but no one has been able to do such a feat so far. I should say the first semi-pro team, by the way, right? And so, looking forward into the next, if they do this and take us to game number 3, it's a fantastic feat. But if Immortals right now takes this game, they continue their run, and I find they genuinely are opening their eyes to a lot of people, because I found coming into this tournament, a lot of people were counting Immortals out. They weren't going to be too sure of their performance, but they, in my opinion, they've surprised a lot of us.
They've definitely come back from where they started. Because again, when they come out of playoffs, they lost in the first round to 100 Thieves pretty quickly. It was the only series that didn't go full 5 games inside of Academy, and then follows up with IMT's not having the greatest start to Proving Grounds by losing to Dignitas in a quick 2-0. Not only would this match continue to be them, okay, we're adapting, we're learning, we're fixing things, they also get their rematch against Dignitas if they win this series. So there is that. If you're rooting for a nice little plot line, you do have that. Whereas, like you said, Resolve, they're the only semi-professional team who's been able to take a game off of one of these Academy teams in series play right now. And so continuing to watch them further themselves throughout the splits, they have already improved from where they were, because when they were Barrage, they made it to the previous round and got knocked out. Now they've made it a little bit further. They don't want their journey to end here, and definitely, especially with how far they've come since the qualifiers, since the open circuit, this team definitely has shown the ability to improve very drastically over that time period. And so now we're here hoping that Immortals can, or my apologies, Resolve can at least show us into Immortals to take us to a game 3 before anything gets decided.
Speaking of adaptation and improvement, though, and continue on the whole theme of Immortals too, we were talking a little bit about the previous game. One main key point I want to focus in on is the early game. right? Although it looked a little bit shaky, and Resolve definitely had entire and full control of that too. Even going into the mid, I said it, they were definitely playing on a dime, and with the flip of a coin too, suddenly things turned up onto their head. So looking right before the draft here, Dean, it's like, what kind of plan would you expect Immortals to have? Like, because I'm personally thinking like they definitely might look towards getting more early game control just to make sure that they can fight Resolve on all fronts.
When your team plan is contingent on taking 5-on-5s, oftentimes that means you want advantages early just because you have more gold in that particular regard. Even if you give up early dragons and things of that sort, it just means that the other team, want those dragons, so it incentivizes fighting more, which if you're ahead in gold, always is helpful. I think they gave up more than they wanted to in the early game here, and so while their game plan was not wrong and their composition was well designed, or at least designed around taking 5-on-5 type fights, I agree with the sentiment of like, do they want better early game? Absolutely. That takes away a lot of the variance that some of these fights can definitely have. And so if they're going to make changes, which I think is possible very easily for the side of Immortals, that would be the first place to start. It's a little bit better early game. I think Victor is amazing for Pretty. I never want to see Pretty off of champions that he's really good at, and Victor is 100% one of them. But a champion, if that gets banned out, that has more early game agency to shove in Orianna, maybe have more interaction with the map, maybe helps kind of mitigate some of those plays that Resolve were able to make.
And with the players that Resolve actually have right now too, and like definitely with their overall game plan going into the second game would be really interesting. Like, it's what I'm looking towards is that, do they kind of ban out AP again? Are they limiting his overall champ pool? Do they let the Aurelian Soul through? They didn't do that last time. They might not do it this time, but I think a lot of questions on our mind, I'm sure on yours. So write down your questions, like dot your I's, color your T's, and by the time you're done that, we'll be into draft. So most of them should be answered. See you back in your bit. Okie dokie, artichokey, it's time for some champ select right in front of your faces, and Thresh taken away right away for the Immortals Academy, and Rise on the other, and continuing the trend of making sure Pretty doesn't have his overall strong suit champions. I imagine we'll see like the LeBlanc, yep, there we go, LeBlanc ban, and maybe if they want to just bring out the Victor, I would expect it to change to a Ziggs though, Dean.
Potentially. Just making sure that they don't give that to Keith is something very safe to go to, which is something to at least consider in the earlier stages. I want a quick kind of like pivot to a small caveat, which is that APA wasn't ever really that massive of a Twisted Fate player before this tournament. Inside of Proving Grounds, he's played it a couple of times, been great at it, and all of a sudden that means that IMT have to respect it. I don't think Pretty plays it too often either, but that is a more recent development as in terms of resolves. You won't go back in their history and see a bunch of Twisted Fate being banned all the time, just because APA picked it up and was amazing at it during the course of Proving Grounds, which is what is kind of prompting this first rotation TF ban.
And it just shows the how much respect like AP's overall champ pool and prowess in this games, if he's able to have an impact on the map, really just deserves and demands though. But one more pick that has been demanding respect is Onda's Lee Sin as they pick it up B1 yet again. So Resolve right now, imagine they pick up their bot lane as, okay, there we go, the blind recon with the Leona, not necessarily banned out. They want to take it for themselves this time to have that same sort of engage type pick, and the Xin Zhao matchup will be the play.
It will. Wanting to make sure to give themselves, again, taking away Joey's recon. Joey was very good on recon and also was a very large amount of the engage that actually was able to help Immortals force in a bunch of those situations that caused so much disarray inside of fights for Resolve. So there was that at least to consider, yes. And then obviously Fnatic is a Xin Zhao player, and then also Xin Zhao being a strong champion, being able to set up potentially for what all kind of ails you in terms of like Orianna Ultimate or any other kind of like a very hard initiation. This champion allows Fnatic to be like effective at all stages of the game, whether he wants to do early, mid, late, whatever it might be. Kind of opens him up to that possibility.
As you go down the list here to the Immortals Academy, like they take away the potential, right? They take away the potential for the Aphelios pick 2, which you saw last game, Resolve 2, with picking up more of these team fighting ultimates. And taking away from the side, like from Resolve, like they also get the Orianna too. So this is interesting, right? We saw how Resolve kind of centered towards those massive 5v5 on ultimates, but now with Light Vigil taken away, along with the Shockwave 2, you have the Lee Sin for ball delivery, they'll instead end up trading priority picks by putting Array on the Ziggs.
So I would agree with you if we were casting anyone not named Resolve. And
You're
specifically
right.
anyone not named APA. However, seeing that it's an Orianna, seeing that like you have the possibility of shoving her in early, having some early effect, we have seen APA go to this pick. Typically as a counter to something like the Twisted Fate, or anything that has low wave there, because you can punish it very heavily. Orianna might fit that bill here for APA, but for all intents and purposes, it is a flex, which is very nice. Now, Array didn't show this until very late in the season. Once it came out, all of a sudden it became a lot more dangerous for Resolve to be able to use it as a tool. But I agree with you. Typically in that bottom lane, especially into Aphelios, it's an effective tool. They are comfortable beyond belief being able to take Recon and the likes of this Ziggs into Aphelios and whatever combo they have to bring, because there shouldn't be much pressure. Also opens up Winter to have more effect on the map.
And we're going down the same sort of play style yet again. You know, we see that Winter wants to definitely roam, though Fang can have the same sort of agency, and Array, like he left on the boss side too, just kind of just stuck farm up against Keith. But this is interesting too, since the take with the Varus, which I guess, you know, they do recognize the potential of the flex, so they want to make sure that Array just has a lot more limited options, considering how Resolve's overall composition is shaping out. I would expect, like, maybe if they want to take the Ezreal, I was gonna say if they want to kite back, but instead, a little bit more CC lockdown too, getting APA on this blind Syndra. Dean, you love Syndra, right?
Me and Syndra have a very tumultuous past. However,
yeah, I'm sure.
in the modern day and age, she is a lot better than what she was previously when she was perma picked by a lot of teams. And this is not blind; it is into Orianna. We do know that. So it is Resolve saying, okay, we know the bottom lane matchup, we know the mid lane matchup, we know Ziggs is in our possession. It's like, okay, APA, is this something that you would want? And APA says, no, give me the Syndra. This is more range, more CC. Another champion that kind of helps with some of the follow-up for like a Rakan dive or like a Xin Zhao dive, because you have more range and things to work with in that regard. So now we're just waiting for what is potentially the top lane pick, wanting to get PCL onto something helpful into the likes of Viper.
Okay. This was banned the previous game, but maybe they try to funnel him into it. So PCL knows what he's going up against. This Fiora Aurelia matchup, I'll be honest, I don't particularly enjoy. I think you pick Trundle here. You pick Trundle. Trundle is so good. No way, right? No. There's no way he actually does this. No, he's trolling. He's playing with our hearts. Okay, there we go. This makes a little bit more sense to me, right? Wukong versus Aurelia. I am not as versed in this matchup. I'm familiar with it, though, especially on the side of the Wukong. He doesn't do too bad, and especially considering Aurelia's current state right now, she's still a monster, but Resolve, though, sticking to what they know best. 5v5s, team fighting ultimates, big engage, big payoff.
Now, they currently have Ziggs in mid lane, which again is a punishment to the Orion. Okay, they're going to switch back and forth between the two. They might just switch it back like 100 times or something like that. But for a second, they arrows back and forth. But what you do have is you got two different dives between both the Xin Zhao and the likes of the Wukong that can be paired with like a Rakan. And then you've got two mages that have good AoE damage to support that into IMT's Academy, who have what is good counter engage. When you've got like Irelia and you've got like Lee Sin and you've got Orianna for a shockwave, you have ways to punish what is the backline. This is two team fighting compositions. We're going to get 5-on-5s. It's going to be exciting. Ravish is going to throw out his voice. This is going to be great. This is going to be a fantastic game.
Yeah, I'm so excited not to be able to speak tomorrow or today. Yeah, it's gonna be so much fun. But honestly, yeah, like you mentioned, it's going to really get really intense from here, because as you go throughout this game, those small leads will then balloon into what could potentially be just within inches of these massive team fights that we could potentially see, whether it be experience or gold, right? Because one small item could potentially make the difference for who manages to get ahead in this game, because it could happen for either one of them here, Dean. And I'm curious, I'm scared, but I will stay vigilant to make sure that we watch this game on a very close microscopic lens.
On the edge of a seat. Under any peripheral that you would like to observe this game. I think one way or another we're going to end up, unless things go crazy in the early game and one of these teams pulls out like a couple thousand gold lead. I'm expecting high late game. Keep eyes on Keith. He's the only like marksman in this game that's going to be doing consistent damage. Yeah, there you go. Microscope, put it on Keith. Edge of your seat. That's how you're watching the game.
100%. As I look to sit down on my seat too, y'all go ahead, get your microscopic lenses out, get your magnifying glasses out to pay attention to this game. It's one you will not want to miss. There's a lot more action coming at y'all at the end of this break. Get you some. And here we go. Resolve with their tournament lives on the line, and Immortals Academy looking to prove everybody right once again, as they deserve to be at the tippity top as we head into game number 2.
Another day. Oh, okay. All right, Winter, I see you. That was an interesting start. I always think about the opposite side, where like if you're on red side, you can do that over the back of the wall if somebody's hiding inside the brush over the dragon pit. But we see the opposite of this. Joey is doing the same thing. Has wrapped around on a Ray.
I mean, like, he's fine. Like, it's not like a ton's gonna happen to him. Like, sure, he loses a little bit of mana, a little bit of health,
yeah.
But like, you just go back into it. Like, bro, he is pool party Ziggs. He's literally chilling.
It's more so that like the first action we get in this game is both supports going into no man's land. Like, that's the first thing we see is we have like Winter starting W going over top of the Baron pit, and then like Joey wrapping around on a Ray. So we talked about 5-on-5 composition. I wonder if they just want to scrap from minute 1. That's going to end up being the shenanigans that we end up getting. I don't anticipate that really, really heavily, given that we have like control mages in mid lane, scaling bot laners, that kind of thing. Top lane, however, is going to be a really exciting place because you've got 2 aggressive junglers and you've got 2 fighters to be able to operate alongside.
Yes, sir. Okay, it is now time for Ravish's top lane tumultuous conundrums. I couldn't find a final T word. Either way, within PCL and Viper 2, it's like, look, Wukong I find does decently into this matchup too, but like as things end up scaling out, as you know, like with Aurelia, she can just out damage like half of her opponents if you're really not stealing her AD like Trundle. So it'll depend if you try to go for much more of these like level 4, level 5 trades. It'll be up to PCL to like kind of play around his W. Or if Fan actually does mirror him, this actually goes really well for him because he gets like the more armor off that stone skin. So right now, yet again, a lot of my eyes will be focused in onto top lane as he already has the early push as expected.
Watch Lee Sin right here. It's possible. Oh, okay. I thought for a second, because we saw red Raptors into Grump, which is the same path we saw from the Trundle in the first series of the day. Jump into top lane and just go for an immediate gank. We did not see that. This is just Anda who's going to be going for the blue buff. He still is open to go to top side, but again, I think there's a ward there that's actually going to cover the side of PCL, as he's not going to have any pressure put onto him anytime soon. Instead, actually, Fnatic and APA find themselves in the midst of a dive into the jungle here, looking for that Lee Sin.
Yeah, we see, like you mentioned, AP is kind of mirroring him on the backside just to make sure that he can try to go for the small invade. They spot him out too, so this gives away a lot of information onto like, and they could possibly just like try to press onto him. But I see Viper has absolutely no mana at all. The Conqueror procs too, but that passive for Aurelia is just so good, bro. All that damage he makes that even when that shouldn't happen, by the way.
Yeah, able to drop a fair amount of health off the likes of the Wukong. Thankfully, like PCL with that W was able to stack up a fair amount of Conqueror stacks, and so that pushes Viper onto the back foot. Ends up having to flash. APA lights all over the place.
Yeah, he goes into this might lands the stun. Though Flotty was able to get one, but Viper is gone. Sparse blood, and Anda can't even do much about it.
He cannot. They're still
I don't
poking
know
away. They're still poking away.
Wait, they probably want this fight. One out of them might be able to get it, but he's under tower. PCL still going for it. Flash,
Oh,
no! Pourquoi?
Like, you can see the point in time in which this play was just like, Resolve is like, should we dive? Should we dive? Should we dive? And then like Fnatic's like, no. Oh, Keith actually getting caught out as well.
Oh, a little bit unfortunate, you know. Pisa, if he gets off that Q, but like Ana did, it just out damages him. But they're going on to Winter to a lot of damage. They're not going to take him down. If Keith's able to get close enough, this should be enough. But instead, it'll boil down to supportal combat.
Oh no. That is the second member of Resolve who is flashed and then immediately died afterwards in the last just 1 minute of gameplay between PCL's kind of dive after he and Fnatic weren't able to get enough distance onto the likes of Anda underneath the tower. And right there, the engagement looked really good onto the Aphelios. We'll see actually how this play turned out. Again, jungler versus jungler, top versus top. This is where we expected a lot of the early game brawling to come from.
Yeah, and like already we're seeing it here too, right? Because like there's back and forth between the two, and the Stone Skin passive actually really helping out too, considering I really wasn't able to stack her.
Right
so
here.
It does really work out, and yeah, right here where Fnatic said, okay, we might be able to get him. Fnatic's looking for it, decides not looking away, but because you saw Tower just does so much damage, and Onda blows him up.
That he does, yeah. Lee Sin, too much damage to start with. Q combination with E, combination with some attack speed from those two is enough to get out more than enough, as PCL had started with the Q, I think probably to try to drop the armor, so the second auto attack was going to be enough, but just couldn't get it done fast enough. I also don't know if the E was not up from the side of PCL. If he had it, maybe he could have like flash E'd immediately when the tower aggro was still on Fnatic, but it appears as though maybe that cooldown wouldn't have been available. One way or the other, that kill doesn't matter too much in terms of top lane. You can see the CS difference between these two off the pressure they've put onto Viper thus far has been insane as they're going for another dive.
PCL doesn't have level 6 points, but he doesn't need it to land the knockup. And nice stun won't matter too much though. Fnatic gets a second kill of the game on Viper.
Yeah, no longer does this like one-on-one matchup matter. This has been anything but a one-on-one underneath the tower.
Okay, a little bit back and forth yet again, because Joey is here though, so if he wanted to Zenith Blade in, he could. But actually locked out one, now lands the knack of the yet again. Immortals a little bit too far forward and get punished by Resolve.
They do. Right there. It has been a ton of pressure from Resolve into topside, making sure that PCL is going to be comfortable. All of this gold has gone into Fnatic because all three of the kills that have occurred so far have gone into that. So you do have this insanely powerful Xin Zhao to work with. As both your mid and your bottom lane, no interaction. We are calling junglers up, we're calling top laners up there, and then we're also calling supports now. We're just getting all of our action into this top lane as much as possible. And the only person that's suffering right now just seems to be Viper. He cannot catch waves. He's getting bullied off. He's dying. Again, the amount of pressure that they're just putting in to make sure that this Aurelia and the Viper is not able to begin into this game is insane.
Good. Honestly, I'm all for it. It's look, and here's why. I love Aurelia. Aurelia's my favorite champion, but I think as of right now, at the stage she's in, she's way too strong. And you can, and like if anyone who's playing the champion is decent at her, you just oppress every other champion in the entire game. except Trundle, which is what I was hoping the PCL would play, but he might not have it back in his wheelhouse. So right now, I will hold off though as we go towards the mid side too. Otto is being spotted there. Nice shockwave onto Winter, because he doesn't feel much threat coming out and just walks away nice and clean.
Oh, actually, I think Anda landed the Q right there. He went in on top of Winter as he had just gone away. Yeah, thankfully there were reinforcements. The Fnatic was in the area to be able to E2. That was a close one. Anda was just like a shark looking for blood in the water as Winter walked away from that fight after the shockwave had hit him. Can we talk about levels for supports as well? They're both level 4 right now. We have like essentially 3 solo lanes with a bunch of roaming happening where most of this ends up in the top side, but like we're seeing a lot more action than we would expect from 2 5-on-5 type compositions. This is both teams desperately looking for an advantage over top of the other one to begin with. This is first attempt at an objective is this Rift Herald. Dragon has not even considered from either of these teams yet.
No, and I want to touch at one point with you to start off here, Dean, because we were talking about Immortals before. We were saying that do they change up their plan in the early game to respond to Resolve? The answer to that being, kinda. Yeah, they've been trying to match at least Resolve with some of these plays, and they've been able to stay just a little bit ahead of the curve, although the gold lead hasn't exactly ballooned on Resolve's side. It's only just 1,000 gold on their end. Like, for now, though, it's like they're at least being more proactive and not allowing just any sort of stacking win con on Resolve's end, where in fact, they actually, although they get denied the Rift Herald, it's still like much more of an even state than expected for now.
We have a place where like Immortals composition, both in bot and in mid, don't have that much kind of initial interaction with the map. Like Orianna versus Syndra is just going to be pushing waves back and forth for the most part, with Syndra usually being able to move a little bit faster to begin with. And bottom wave is just literally like Ziggs shoving in, and then Keith shoving in back on the Aphelios. Array has had to back up, I think, a little bit more just because of potential pressure from Pretty or Anda onto the bottom side of the map, which is why you're seeing like he's down at least 20 minions right now. But aside from that, it has been Resolve making the most of some of these top lane plays, making sure that PCL is going to be comfortable. And yet again, we see more pressure to be applied on the top side of the map now that Anda's here.
PCL just isolated by himself, though. A nice knockup on the tube, but beautiful start and a shockwave to boot. The layering of the CC. Although result in a 1-for-1 for now, though, but we see the squad is here from Immortals Academy to shut down Fnatic.
Able to pull 2 kills. That is Resolve with 3 members, but unfortunately the stronger 3 members on the side of Immortal, since they are able to get Pretty up there. The punishment is mid-wave here for the side of APA, does get shoved in, and so Orianna is going to have to TP back for that. Or my apologies, not Orianna. It's going to have to be Viper that TPs back for that. So the response to the waves is going to be met on both sides. Ends up just being the 2-for-1 here on the top side.
And we see as replay overall here breaks down to you see how actually Viper as well Q's out of that, but still is able to land the flawless duet. So allows space for, like you were saying, Pretty to come in, land the shockwave, even with no mana, just has enough to get off one combination. And it is 5v5s. If you're bunched up like that, you will get punished. And Resolve right now, Dean, it's like we're expecting them to look more towards slowing down the game, like hit their item breakpoints, especially for for the sake of Array, just like on the Ziggs. As I said it before, as long as you have a Ziggs, you always have a win con but Immortals is just not allowing that.
No. Immortals, at least they're now covering better for their topside plays that are coming out from the side of Resolve. The Aurelia has not been saved, but at least your Lee Sin is back in the game, and Pretty has picked up at least a sizable share of gold, as well as your Aphelios having a bit of a lead. So when 5-on-5 fights do start to break out, things start to get a lot more interesting, because that's where Immortals' like kind of individual play really starts to come through to shine. So it feels like almost that RSV.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's. Okay. Whoa!
What?
APA. You're insane.
Oh my
You're
God.
actually insane.
Bro, always plan ahead. Did that. He planned ahead this time. That was sick.
That was absolutely insane. It was one of the coolest outplays I've ever seen, and it was him just not dying. And yet somehow it felt so incredible to watch. He saves his E until the last possible moment to try to deny Anda. The two of them played a little bit of like a mind game, the shenanigans of like, oh, I'm gonna throw Q, if you throw E, I immediately kill you. And yet APA is still able to hold it until the last possible second, ends up denying Anda any additional damage, doesn't tie to the red smite, opens up bot side play, ends up being the Rift Herald being shoved in the bottom side.
Yeah, huge stuff here, and focusing back in onto APA here, Dean. You know, like although he has been able to have a much of an impact across the entire map, I find just in the entire season and a lot of this series, like APA is such a force to be reckoned with, especially when he has any sort of resources.
He's been lauded for now what seems like 2-3 years as one of the best amateur supports, semi-professional supports that exist. And you can see every single season his level of play somehow increases, which almost seems impossible in a lot of regards. Bottom side tower, they're just going for the 9 afterwards.
Big boom, bomb, and sayonara. They catch that on Keith. But we think about APA.
More so, I want to talk about Keith and Joey just overstaying, which is why they get punished right there. I mean, the tower is going to go down on like 2-3 auto attacks at the most. APA, his E is down. This time, there is no way to deny, and never mind about APA.
But yeah, definitely, like outside of moments like that, he has definitely been, you know, like one of the best mid laners in the overall semi-pro pool, right? You know, going down from team to team, though, it's like you've seen his deep champ pool and his ability to kind of like lead the game has like I thought, and honestly, like his overall improvement in just from when he was much younger to like where he is at now has definitely been a progression that's been nice to watch.
When we first saw him kind of debut, it was like Aurelion Sol and Kled and Talia, and like that was what he played. It was just things that roamed. And his identity slowly evolved into like, okay, there's more map supporting stuff, like Karma got added to the pool eventually. Then you had like control mages, Orianna Syndra got added to the pool eventually. Then you found out that he has like this insane Lucian. And it feels like the more and more time that we see him, he's one of the few like players that has like the champion pool that's evolving alongside him. And the more fleshed out it becomes, just the more insanely talented he looks, because all these champions are things that he just strives on very effectively. You've seen that in the Syndra. Yes, he got picked off by the Lee Sin because the E was unfortunately used to be able to try to stall out the Orianna. But it was a play before that, the one where he was able to live through that situation, that really is like the sparks of life for APA and the things that really kind of make people fall in love with him as a movie.
Yeah, it's like just plays consistently, being able to perform, but right now he will not be here for this play. As we see Resolve, though, they could look for a potential steal up in this Rift Herald, but with the way things are now, right, there's a lot of members of Immortals Academy here. I don't know if they want to risk it, because a lead given over to Immortals now will make the game a lot harder and they make the safer play.
They do. Neither team willing to, I think, flip on a fight quite yet. Both of them are focused on the 5-on-5. The big thing is, something you've alluded to multiple times, is this like win condition on Ziggs. The early game win condition on Ziggs is take outer towers. That's going to secure you gold. That has happened so far. Bottom lane tower was brought down, mid lane tower now brought down, and it's 2,500 gold on what seems like it shouldn't be. Yes, you've got this like CS deficit for Viper in the top lane, but it feels like that shouldn't have as much of an impact on the 2,000 gold. That's because the towers have gone down.
And we saw this before as well, outside of IMTA, and really just whoever picks up Ziggs throughout the entire day in this tournament, right? Where you have this siege effect that you can consistently continue to pressure across pain points on the map. But speaking of pain points, Winter might be in a bit more pain. He has to support, pops the ultimate. Nice little quickness to get out of that. Oh! And as well, the nice little decoy too, but no, he gets caught up on the back end shockwave when he gets the minions. But as everybody's here for economy, big bomb though only touches the outer ends of Immortals Academy, but now how can they respond? The back of PCL is being sold.
No way.
He he gets out alive. Viper can't get him, and now Fnatic is now in, fighting 2v1 already on the backside. Can Resolve do this? If I will be huge. APA2 is holding out 3 members. How are all of these players like fighting a 3v1 in the exact same lane, Dean? Now Viper's just dead. Yep, Pretty gets away. Was that a 4K or a 3K or a 5? Is that an ace? I don't even know anymore.
Who's to say? What I know is Pretty didn't die, but that's about all I know about the situation. That was insane. mostly because of just like the geometry of the fight. We had like 3 different situations in which multiple members from IMT were bearing down on one member from Resolve, and they just keep getting bounced away from that target as fast as possible. You saw PCL not go down. He was on the verge of dying and wasn't actually close. We'll get a chance to see that, as this ultimate was like, it was perfect. It was perfectly set up to make sure that once the Lee Sin came in, it denied the Q everything else. He able to slip out the back of the fight. Second ultimate was able to do a little bit more, and Viper doesn't even kill him underneath the tower, all while APA gets this first kill. You see Keith kind of like begin to bear it down, but Winter gets kind of zoned off. This is the focus onto Fnatic. As soon as they can't kill Fnatic because of Array, they turn onto APA, who gets pushed to the left side of the fight, who also gets a kill and denies any more aggression from coming through. It's just RSV stalling this fight as much as possible, while every other member is able to kind of focus down target by target by target. Finally, a 5-on-5 that really heavily goes in the favor of Resolve.
And it's really because like how they played around these like interesting quadrants, like you're mentioning, right? Just like the focus from Immortals Academy, like definitely was not there, because you saw like they just couldn't lock down this key target, and then you're stuck when all those ultimates are expunged. Big shout out to PCL for playing beautifully around the flawless duet and this decoy here too, because like he's been able to get out some really tough situations, and which is where a lot of this Wukong Aurelio combo really comes down to how you play around that Wukong W and bring you out on top of your trades as they get this bot tower, the pushing power of Resolve. Right now they have a lot of map control. Immortals Academy stuck a little bit on the back end to see how they respond, as they can get mid tier 2. Okay, wow.
When I said that Immortals isn't exactly one of the most like refined macro teams, this is part of what I was talking about, where like right there, they like sacrifice bottom tower, which is fair, because you can't really prevent all this team with how much gold advantage, how much push they have with the Ziggs. But then losing mid tower off the push of just APA alone feels like it shouldn't have happened, and instead it's 2 chained inner towers off the back of one another, pulling even more gold lead here for the side of Resolve. It's not even just the fights. Again, 4 or 5 towers to 1 tower in exchange. That's a massive gold advantage that's just being generated by Resolve that is unresponded to, and likely will remain unresponded to. As this should grab it, yeah. No way. No way.
No.
That's so tragic.
Okay,
no
observers,
way.
producers, can we just get the health on that real quick? Can we find out, like, what is that living with? I'm sure just a swift breeze will knock it down immediately and furiously, but Immortals right now is, little bit definitely just stuck on the back end. Come on, 44 health. 44, bro, that's practically my age.
That's true. It's one auto attack from going down. It's also a little bit less gold that Immortals like have in their pockets right now. Eventually it's gonna get taken. Like there's almost no way to prevent that from happening, because at some point literally somebody just walks up, even just like a Lee Sin hopping over the wall and like auto attacking is gonna get that gold. But again, it's just fallen short here from the side of IMT, and it's resembling a little bit of what's happened in this game, only because their plays haven't been able to kind of come together to fruition the way they've wanted to. Their early game last time also looked weak. The big difference is it feels like Resolve is really easy to play, with like Wukong ultimate, Xin Zhao being insanely fed and not being killable very easily, and then Syndra also having like this range alongside this Ziggs range. Their siege feels a lot easier to kind of access, so when you don't have a gold advantage for the side of IMT, trying to defend towers and stuff becomes a lot harder if you're going to force. The one saving grace, the Orianna, you do have that, and you have good ball delivery with multiple members, so if they try to get a little bit big for their britches on the side of Resolve, they go sieging where they shouldn't, and the Orianna will out like Shockwave ends up landing onto multiple members. All of a sudden, like the game does flip back to Immortals, where like they become favored, especially with Baron up, but that's still a little ways down the road. It's going to be up to Resolve to like stay clean here, but they definitely have all of the tools necessary to close out a game like this.
So this is actually what we saw in game number 1 as well, right? Where Resolve had previously, just if they were to overstep the bounds, like they get caught out, and Immortals suddenly have a swift trap back into the game. But looking at this game just overall on a wider scope, the macro right now, especially from this game from the side of Resolve, has been, you mentioned it, like phenomenal. Like the overall wave control too, and the sieging power on the side of the Ziggs, like it's something that Immortals just have not responded to. Like they've been trying to like maybe get some sidewave control by just setting Viper there, but like Resolve in this 5v5, like they can just continue to push them down. Like even look and PCL as well, the mid lane as well. He has all that control, and Viper will be able to get the second tower of the game. But when it comes down to Immortals right now, Deegan, it's like, what do they do? Are they just supposed to focus on objectives? Because Dragon's coming up, and that's the sole point for Resolve.
They're very intently trying to get gold into this Aurelia by putting it in a lane that's not going to be the Wukong lane. This means that PCL can't contest against things like tower takes, like wave takes, and things like that. The exchange then has to be like, you have to be susceptible somewhere to the potential siege that comes down. There it was top lane. I think, honestly, Resolve maybe could have leaned into top lane right there a little bit harder when Aphelios caught mid wave. If they do so, they might be able to crack top inner tower, something along those lines. But again, you don't want to overforce, you don't want to overstep into the Orianna. You're going to play careful, so they just take the damage that they get, and they're not going to worry about anything else too heavily right here. But that's the intention I think IMT is going to take. They want to get this Aurelia active so that it can have an impact inside of fights, and the only way to do that is to play in the other solo lane that is not currently like absorbed by Wukong in this 4-1 setup the Resolve's been going for. They are right on this Baron. That is getting melted as well with the green-white gun setup.
Resolve needs to respond to this too. Like APA is there, but PCL is not. They just get forced off of it. They puts down the bomb as we saw. I guess IMT were definitely looking to turn, and there we go. That stop. I thought they might have gone for it, maybe with the flip too, with Exceed if Resolve actually goes for the dragon. Instead, they just take the Baron instead and flip the game on its head. But so far, just one bomb is enough to stop them, and Resolve get the dragon for free.
That they do. That it feels right there that IMT knows that they're down a significant portion of gold and that they're not willing to team fight.
No way,
no smites,
bro.
Man. No smites. Orianna Ball, QW. It's enough to outburst anything that came out from PCL. Maybe what was happening is like they weren't anticipating the potential of that. Oh, Joey wants the smoke. He's gonna catch PCL with an ultimate.
Yeah, there we go. And then he doesn't have that anymore either. Forces the flash out of him as well. But nice little dodging going on the side of the Wukong, playing a little bit of trickster to stay alive.
TP's still here. Are they going to be looking for it? They've got a wave behind them. They're going for this 5-on-5. Wukong is so deep right here. There's no ultimate from PCL. What? PCL, there's no ultimate.
He wants it, but can he be able to take it though? They actually locked down one, but look at APA and Ray on the backside. All that damage, you focusing right onto the key with the ADC down. Where does your damage, Immortals? Who will you hurt? How will you touch them? You cannot. Resolve, have the gusto, the moxie, be able to take the fight to your faces as they head towards the base.
Extremely. Oh, actually, more dive coming through. I think that should be just the end of it. They just want to push them off this tower as fast as possible. I gotta give respect to PCL. I do not know a lot of players that would say, oh, I have no Wukong ultimate, I'll flank anyway and just generate a fight. But throwing his body into that backline, slowing them down, buying enough space for Fnatic to get in, as well as to like set up like Ziggs bombs, set up Syndra, things like that, to be able to pull a couple of kills off that. The aggressive move up from IMT to look to punish him, kind of incredible. Again, PCL's down his ultimate right here after having to disengage. TP's very far into the distance. They easily could have maybe brought him down if they're able to focus him very quickly, but instead he's able to stall this out long enough for the rest of his team to catch up and for this fight to actually go heavily in the favor of the side of Resolve.
And look, they just find one target, they focus in on him to all the resources, everything just put in onto Keith. And when your Aphelios isn't there, when he's caught up on the backside, the Shockwave can do some, but like, what do you do after that, right? Who's gonna be a damage dealer? Viper's been focused on so heavily too, but Keith right now yet again, okay! Caught out back to back. This Aphelios is having a no good, very bad day as Resolve looks towards the Baron.
And now it is just like Immortal having their pieces picked away one at a time. The previous fight, Keith had been brought down with no response. Right there, brought down with no response again. They still have Orianna Ball because, like, most of the gold is in Pretty, right? If they go for Pretty, you know the defense is going to be there. Instead, they go for the pickoffs onto some of these less important members. They're going for a fight now that they're kind of at a disadvantage.
Land one stun though. Joey's the next target, but they can't. The stun is not enough, right? He's just like, okay, the sun will fall yet again. Darkness goes over the rift here, Dean, but the Baron will continue to stand true and free as Resolve will end up taking.
It's a very slow Baron. They don't have the marksman. If they have Wukong there and they have him like kind of delivering damage, that's fair. But it seems like RSV, they're more intent on trying to force this into a 5-on-5 situation than attempting to like full take this Baron. But unfortunately, IMT knows this game. It's the game that they play all the time, and so they're just going to give it up. They're going to say, okay, we'll wait for later. We still have a chance if Aurelia is able to get online, if Aphelios is able to get online, if we can connect the right ultimates with like Shockwave and with the Moonlight Vigil, maybe we can still turn one of these massive 5-on-5 5 type fights. Especially with that Dragon Steel, you did buy yourself 5 more minutes to work with. So it's up to Resolve to try to push this advantage a little bit further. Right now, it's probably going to stagnate for the next minute and 37 seconds before the next Dragon comes up. And even after that, it's more so about how do they push this Baron to even further use with this Ziggs. Can they actually set up this like counter fight with this Orianna Shockwave to be able to deny the Baron push? If they kill off Ziggs and they remove the Baron buff from 1 to 2 members, seems like Resolve end up just like stagnating here. Maybe that's the intention. But otherwise, you're running the risk of Baroned up Ziggs just wrecking through your base.
And Dean, this was the game plan. This is what you wanted Resolve to do. Slow down the game. We wanted them to take the fight on their terms, because when you play things fast and loose, Immortals is able to respond heavily. We know they love to scrap, and the smoke will come to Resolve if they ask for it too. But where there's no fire, where there's no targets to be had, the smoke will be given out to nobody for now. Though, as this is how they just continue to push their advantage, right? Just like trying to siege as fast as possible, as much as possible, while trying to go in for these very creative flanks, just to make sure that Immortals are fighting on a consistent disadvantage. Wow.
Array just timed that wave so well. Now bottom or mid and top are crashing at roughly the exact same time. Nice stalling from Pretty to be able to print that into the base.
Oh, woo-hoo! And their Khan shall tango and dance in between the team fight too. And we go here, comes PCL. That's 2 down the side of Immortals, and suddenly we're looking at a final stand, bro. Okay, Resolve, they get 1 inhib. The wave is coming on the next. They get top side too. They could just end right here, as far as I'm seeing, but they have to take out Viper. Viper is a massive threat. This fight has to come to them. Okay, Joey's up in 12 seconds, Heat in 20 though. Can they stall for this long? I think not here, Dean. Resolve with the steadfastness, with the intention to go to game number 3 and keep themselves alive. Will take down Immortals this time, and y'all got it, bro. We're going to game 3.
They take the number 1 kind of tool that Immortals is going to be having in most of these games, which is Viper, something that they've banked on for the majority of the splits. The combination of Viper and Anda, they attack it immediately, pound it into the ground, make sure PCL is going to be this massive team fighting force. And what would you know, like, they're able to completely control the remainder of the game from just that point. Every single fight felt like it was completely under the control of Resolve. They never lost control the way that they did in the previous game before that, when they were even in gold, but every member was still contributing. They were able to kind of bear down on them, and some of those team fights just never was an option for the side of Immortals in this one.
I mean, but speaking of bearing down, although the Volder was not here, we'll see if he is able to come out play in the next game. And if he can bear down on more, I can talk about one of my favorite champs as well. But for now, the Resolve, fantastic game for them. Immortals, I'm sure they have a lot to think about as we head into the final game for the final series of the night. Y'all stay locked to your seats, because I know I'm going to be. Catch you soon.